The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Gandhi.
Bending, Not Breaking. Season 2, Episode 2. The Cave of Two Lovers. Oh, it's time for Episode 2.
Episode 2.
Of Season 2.
Season 2.
Of Bending, Not Breaking.
Bending, Not Breaking.
Please stop that. Please stop doing that.
I just don't know what to say when you're doing the intro, and I want to be present.
You can jump in. This is Sunshine Mayfield.
This has been Pruitt.
And this is Bending Not Breaking, as we've said. And as always now, hopefully, he has not quit yet. Our producer, executive producer, just producer.
Primary producer.
The dude who produces this.
Only producer.
The one, the only, Max Gongaware.
I don't think it's a thing that like podcasts are that intentional about introducing their producer.
But
I know podcasts that do that.
Well, I want to do it anyways. We're happy to have you here.
It's good to be here.
You're a new part of this family.
Thank you.
And just so everyone knows, to keep up with Max, he has never seen an episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender or The Legend of Korra, and so he has zero context for anything we've talked about, and he has only heard
the same thing, or are they two different things? How do I know which thing you're talking about at any given time?
Like Legend of Korra versus Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Correct.
So we are currently going through the series of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
So what does The Legend of Korra have to do?
The sequel series.
Okay. So season 2 is Legend of Korra.
No.
Seasons 1, 2, and 3 are Avatar: The Last Airbender.
So you're telling me we're going to like eventually get to The Legend of Korra?
That's
correct.
The goal.
How many episodes are in each season?
20.
All right.
But we've already done 20, so out of the 120 possible episodes, 20
You only have 100 left.
We only have 100 left. We've already done 20. It's flown by. We've already done 21 episodes, so you're in it.
If y'all are interested in producing future episodes of this program, you can email Airbnb at archiv. What is the email? I don't know the email.
All right, that's a great segue. Our email is thearchive@gmail.com. Our Instagram and Twitter are both at BNB_pod. Not Airbnb, though I see the confusion now after we've created that handle.
I almost had it.
BNB_pod. And that's on Twitter and on Instagram, so please follow us there. And give us things. So we have different segments that we do, and so that's a great way to get involved in the show. You want to hear your
voice?
What
did I segue to our next segment?
Let's do that. That. What we got coming up? Well, how was your week, Ben? Was it good?
You know, I really got a chance to practice my earth self-care skills.
Ooh.
You know, and now we're here and we're practicing this new thing, and we're going to be learning about hospitality this week.
Ah, like a hotel.
Kind of.
Sure.
You know,
That's always what I think of hospitality, is people go into like the hospitality industry.
Oh, sure.
And that's like Disney and stuff.
Yeah, also known as the service industry.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, which kind of brings us to our opening quote from Gandhi. He's talking about, service. But before we dive any further, I really want to make sure we hear from Max in the uninformed recap, because I really want to know what happens this week.
Literally my favorite segment that we've ever created.
Yeah, I want to know what happens, frankly. So, Max.
As your listenership plummets, this is going to be your favorite segment. Just because you know me and you think I'm funny.
I think it's, I agree. Yeah, but this is, for me, this is my self-care.
All right. Give me the magic words or whatever the heck you need from me.
The opening scene is Sokka is reclining on a leaf in the water.
Was reclining on a leaf. Are these people like really small?
Kind of like
it's a very big leaf.
He's
you don't have to yell into the microphone.
It's a very big leaf.
And so while Aang and Katara are practicing learning waterbending skills.
I remember Aang and Katara from last week.
Yep. So, and then the ending scene is everyone gets out of the cave safely, but then the gang realizes that Omashu has been taken over by the Fire Nation.
You hate to see it.
Your key words this week are love, tunnel, badgermole, poison, and theft. On your mark. get set. You have around 30 seconds to do your best. Good luck.
All right, well, as we all know, of course, the opening scene of Season 2, Episode 2 of The Last Airbender is when Sokka is reclining on a leaf in the water, and then Aang and Katana practice water-bending forms. What's funny so far?
Keep going. You're doing great.
So, of course, a water-bending form is like, you could do it in the form of elephant, or you could do it in the form of a badger male, or a badger mole, or of course, that's that. And when it's when they do it in the form of a badger mole that Sokka and Aang and Katana all fall in love with each other. But then it's a love tunnel that they're poisoned by, and of course that poison thefts them of that very same love, which is what happens at the end when everyone gets out of the cave safely, because they've been poisoned of love theft badger mole. And they realize that Amashu has been taken over by the fire water. Speaking of fire water.
Well done, Max. Well done.
Well, as Ben cleans up a spill, I will recap what actually happened in the episode.
You mean that wasn't what happened?
Well, I'm going to give you a C.
I'll take it.
I'm going to give you a C. So what actually happens in that episode is Sokka's reclining, they're practicing the water bending forms, and they meet a group of nomads that just show up and tell them about a tunnel that gets them from point A to point B towards Amashu through the mountain path.
Secret tunnel.
Secret tunnel. Secret
tunnel.
Yeah. So
what was that?
That's a song that the nomads sing about the secret tunnel.
Really?
Yeah, legitimately. So then we get a cut to Zuko and Iroh, who's having trouble finding food. Iroh finds a plant that is either the white dragon or the white jade. One which is a delicious tea plant, one which is poison. Drinks it as a tea. Turns out
Poison.
it's poison. We cut back to the nomads and them traveling through the tunnel. Aang and Katara get separated from Sokka and the nomads. In the tunnel, have to find their way out. They turn off their torches, find that love finds the way out, while Sokka and the nomads get helped out by badger moles that get them out of the tunnel. And
So I had that part right.
yeah, the badger
Totally.
moles get
Nailed
them
it.
out of the tunnel.
Yeah.
They're blind. They're badgers, but
Because
they're
those are
also
the water
moles.
forms.
They were practicing the octopus form, so you were right on. There was an animal.
Yeah, elephant.
You were close.
Kind of close.
2 elephants have 8 legs.
Like an
Right.
octopus.
Right.
Good math. I'm proud of you. So the gang gets out of the tunnel. Zuko and Iroh throughout this episode in a parallel storyline are given food and dinner and taken care of by a nice family that admits that they were refugees at one point. And at the end, after all their nice hospitality, Zuko steals a chocobo from the family and rides it off into the distance with Iroh.
Is Wayne Brady going to have to chocobo?
That was an outdated reference. That is old.
And so, talking about hospitality.
Isn't this
with
show pretty
episode-
old? Like, why did it take until just now to do a podcast about it?
There have been one or two out there. And
5 or
they're
6?
They're listening. They're great. They're good. Check them out too.
Yeah. We just have a different focus.
That's right. The focus of this episode being
Hospitality.
hospitality. Max, what was a time where someone was very hospitable to you, and how did it make you feel?
I have a friend who majored in hospitality, and she now works at a hotel. And I've never stayed at any of the hotels she works at, but I do find that she's a nice person. So she's majored in a good thing.
Is hospitality is that being nice?
I mean, I think it's like being nice, but
just
also
part of it.
I think it's part of it. Like, you got to be hospitable. Part of being hospitable is nice, but like it's also being welcoming and inclusive and caring about the accoutrement of whatever you're creating.
That was a fancy word.
I don't know if that was just one. Like, what is accoutrement? Is that, how many words is that?
I have no idea. No idea.
I think it's French.
It sounds French. It sounds real French. Ben, what were moments in this episode where hospitality stuck out to you? And then when you say hospitality, what are you looking for? What does that mean to you?
Let's start there. So for me, hospitality, and I'm going to hark back to, again, that opening quote, it's all about service. I think hospitality is when you are able to put your needs aside and be in service of others. And I think that involves, sometimes it's, the typical thing that we think about is like, oh, when we have a guest in our home, we're going to treat them with our best effort. So we're going to give them our best food. We're going to make sure that everything is clean where they sleep. We're going to offer up our bed for them to sleep in instead of having them sleep on the couch. All of those things where we are putting someone else ahead of our own self. And I think that's kind of what hospitality comes to for me. Is that kind of a similar thing to what you paid attention to?
I try to look at it different ways, because I mean, clearly the biggest moment of hospitality is when Zuko and Iroh, known as Lee, and what was the name that they
Junior.
Well, Junior, yeah, Lee is Junior, and then Uncle Mushi, where their aliases.
Because he has a mushy face.
Yeah. But they were the
Wasn't that
they were taking
Eddie Murphy's character in Mulan?
Mushi?
That's Mushu.
The dragon.
You had me interested for half a second.
Who I don't think the dragon's going to be in the Mulan remake, like the live action remake.
What?
Yeah. I have heard through news outlets that won't be a part of it.
That's ridiculous.
So there will likely be no Mushu in the live action remake.
That seems dumb.
Anyways, back to Avatar.
You mean they're not going to have a live action dragon?
There was one in The Hobbit.
There was a live action everything else in The Lion King.
No, that was animated, bro.
I would argue the same thing. I would say that is an animated movie, not a live action movie. There's only one scene apparently in that movie that is...
I'm going to have to cut you off. We're 12 minutes in.
action.
Let's get back to the hairbenders.
So there's that moment where Zuko and Iroh are taken in by this family and given meals, and she takes care of Iroh's rash, and but even speaks to more. They're very vulnerable with the two of them, and so talking about being refugees and what it was like to be displaced by the Fire Nation and what that did to them, and what I'm guessing altered their ability to say, hey, we were refugees at one point, so we are going to be kind to people who are in similar situations. And so, is hospitality contagious? Is it like a ripple effect?
Something that I wrote down was that hospitality and compassion are interlinked, right? I think compassion helps teach Zuko and Iroh about the condition of what it means to be hospitable, right? It helps them. People are hard to hate close up, and I think this is a really good example of. The Fire Nation is trying to take over all the Earth Nation, but really when you get to know people on an individual basis, you see that people are people and they want to help each other. And I think this is a really good example of how the Earth Nation, who has been oppressed by the Fire Nation for years, is putting themselves in service of Zuko and Iroh. Granted, they don't know that they're from the Fire Nation, but that act of kindness, that act of hospitality, is something that they desperately needed. Like, Iroh probably could have died if he wasn't treated. Right?
Oh yeah, Iroh absolutely could have. But even Zuko on an emotional level of sitting there being like, hey, I know what you've been through. I've lost family members before. I've been in a similar situation. I see you.
I've been burned like you before.
Like, I see you.
Yeah.
And is that a part of hospitality? That initial being vulnerable and empathetic, is that a part of it? Because that's not something you think of initially when you're like, I'm going to a hotel. I don't expect the bellhop to sit there and be like, I'm empathetic to why you're here. I guess maybe you do, but not in that type of way.
I think that depends. I think, there is service, and then there's excellent service. And then, there are levels and gradations. People can be kind and generous and be serving someone, but you can serve someone better or worse, right? There's conditions of servitude and how that looks. And so if I'm going to be serving you to the best of my ability, sometimes that might involve me being empathetic and connecting with you and seeing you for who you really are. And sometimes, I don't want my waiter or waitress to get to know me on a personal level. I want them to pour the water and then gently like, okay, now I get to be present with the people who I'm with, right? And so I think that service looks different depending on the situation, depending upon who you're serving, when, how, all of those things make a difference.
But when you're being hospitable, it requires you to be empathetic and sit there and say, what does this person need or want in this moment?
Precisely, exactly right. You are putting their needs ahead of yours, right? What do they need in order to be successful? What do they need in order to feel better? And how can I serve them and make that happen?
Perfect. What were the moments for you where you saw hospitality? Did you see anything with the nomads and the gang?
Even before that, though, I think the opening sequence, right? I always try to pay attention to the opening sequence and see, like, does the theme that we're looking through matter? And can I look at this opening sequence differently? So when Katara is speaking about the Fire Nation attacked us, blah, 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 the Fire Nation is not very hospitable. And what that brought...
No,
right?
They are not.
They're not to other nations. And I think that's not true that, like, people in the Fire Nation are not hospitable. I don't think that's true. I think that the Fire Nation, as in Fire Lord Ozai, and the people who are in power are not very hospitable. But that comes across as an entire nation not being hospitable, right? And so power really comes to mind here, and it makes me question that. And so with great, like, it comes to, like, with great power comes great responsibility. And, like, when we have power, it is our responsibility to make sure that we are wielding in a way that is in service of others, right? That's kind of what comes to mind here. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. Like, if you have a responsibility to treat other people who aren't benefiting the same way in a hospitable manner, you've got a responsibility to say, I've been giving these things. I'm going to use them in a way that treats other people fairly and hopefully shows kindness and compassion to them in those moments. Whether that's power in many different ways, right? There's many different privileges that lie out there. On the flip side, we see moments where you could argue that Sokka, when dealing with the nomads, was not necessarily super hospitable.
That's because he was putting himself first.
Or is it when he was? I would argue he was super fearful of his own safety,
sure,
of his own physical safety. And so, are you even capable of being hospitable when you are in a place that is not a sphere of safety in some way, shape, or form?
That's a really good point. So we talk about the hierarchy of needs, right? Like, you have to feel safe in order to be able to do. Like, there's a you cannot laugh when you truly don't feel safe. Like, your body doesn't let you, right? And so that, I mean, as a general rule, I think that can be proven wrong. But, like, as a general rule, what happens, your body doesn't allow you to truly feel happiness and joy and laugh, because laughter is something that comes from safety. And this is a good example of, like, when you are feeling unsafe, you are way more unlikely to be hospitable. And so, therefore, if we want to build hospitality and we want that to be a part of our culture, we have to prioritize safety. Emotional safety, physical safety, mental safety, spiritual safety, etc., etc., etc.
So what would you say to the argument of, like, we're not just going to put a bunch of safe spaces out there for people, right? We're not just going to build safe spaces. But I think, that's not exactly what we're talking about here. We're not talking about building a legitimate space that is safe. We're saying treating people in a manner that provides emotional safety. And if you haven't experienced trauma that comes with different experiences, that was probably a poor way to word that, then maybe you don't know what makes someone safe or unsafe in that sphere.
So to put context around that, one of the things that I have the joy of doing is I've been privileged to be able to lead what are called safe zone trainings, and that is a LGBTQ plus inclusion project in which we are training individuals, community members, etc., to be more inclusive of the LGBTQ plus community. And so, as a facilitator of that training, what happens is there's this connotation, there's this question, there's this construct around, like, this is a safe space. And, like, all of a sudden, once you say that, it becomes a safe space. And that's just not true, right? That's not something that just happens when you say it. And I think a lot of people will lead those trainings and say, all right, y'all, this is a safe space. You can say whatever you want. And then people are like, no. because that there has to be work involved.
Stuff that trusts the people who are in here to treat it that way.
Exactly. You have to build that trust. You have to build a safe container in which people feel safety, and that's when people will start to share. And so how do we create that rather than just say it? It's all about not just saying what we want, but practicing what we want as well.
Well, but what about the argument of like, well, if you go through a non-safe space, you learn how to deal with that, and then you can handle it in the future, versus, let's try to create a safe space for people.
I think that's bull. And for me, it's one of those things where that's the equivalent of saying man up. I need you just man up. You'll learn how to deal with it if you just man up. You'll learn how to deal with it if you just go through it, right? And what doesn't kill you make you stronger. Yeah, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or it beats you down and it's a traumatic experience, and then you have to relive it for the rest of your life, and it becomes something that terrorizes you and makes it so that you aren't able to be present in the moment, and it makes it so that you're incapable of experiencing the joy that is in life. And so I disagree fundamentally.
Yeah, well, that's one way to teach a lesson, but there are probably better ways to teach that lesson or to learn how to handle those things. Same thing with like getting hit with a belt when you were a child, right? Like my parents spanked me with a belt. Well, they taught me things, and I potentially could have learned those same things in a more productive way and not gotten hit with the belt.
Huh.
Right? So, like, I think those are, when we're talking about hospitality, creating that safe space, creating an environment where people feel welcomed, knowing that they belong for exactly who they are, is vital to being hospitable.
And again, I think that's a really good example of what is easier as the person who is trying to hold their child accountable. It's probably easier to change behavior very quickly by using a belt.
Well, and scientifically, you get a dopamine rush when you do that.
Right?
Like
and
the parent gets a dopamine rush when they do that.
You get scientifically, parent gets a dopamine rush, but also you're more likely to change behavior very quickly by using physical force. However, long term, what is best in terms of servicing that child in a way that's going to help them be better in the future, right?
Goes back to the quote of take a reasonable amount of time up front so you don't have to take an unreasonable amount of time to fix it later.
That's exactly what it is. And if we are able to be hospitable and in service of our children up front, rather than using corporal punishment, we are better able to serve them in the long run by cultivating a child that is better equipped to encounter the world.
For sure. So let's get back on task with Avatar and talk about the Nomads, because I love the Nomads.
Secret tunnel.
Legitimately one of my favorite character
Secret
stories
tunnel.
in the show, period. I wish they showed up more.
Secret tunnel.
Because when we talk about creating a hospitable environment and a safe environment, they don't create an unsafe environment, but Sokka still doesn't feel safe.
I would argue that they are incredibly open, and they are unashamed of who they are, and therefore it is very easy to be like, they are so laid back that you can be whoever you want to be in their presence, and they'll be like, cool.
There's a song about that.
Yeah, Joe, cool, that's awesome. And so, in a way, that's very liberating, and it makes it very easy to just be you around them. And you'll notice in that opening scene where they're right after the initial meetup, they're sitting together and they're braiding Katara's hair, and Aang's just sitting relaxing, and Sokka's like, he's so uncomfortable with being still. We've gotta go.
That's what Max is doing when he keeps us off of tangents by
he keeps
making us go
gesticulating
behind the mic.
Yep. Anyway,
I'm looking at Twitter. Y'all sound great.
Anyway, moral of the story is, I think that by being open and willing to see people as they are and have no judgment, I think that's a really excellent form of hospitality.
Yeah, but at a certain point, for them, we get that one cut where Sokka comes up with an idea, and they go, "Oh, you wanted me to think of an idea?" Well, I've got an idea.
No, I've had an idea for 3 hours.
Yeah, so, like, at what point is it hospitable to be clear with expectations, whether you are the host or the guest? And I don't even know if that's the best, because that doesn't define every relationship, but in those moments, what's the is there hospitality in being clear?
I think the lens that the nomads were looking through was not hospitality. That's the lens we're looking through. And so for them, their like values lie in being present in the moment and not thinking about the destination, but living presently in the journey.
Yes.
That's their like value, right? And so when we look at this through a lens of hospitality, what we see is how they could be or were hospitable, or they could be more hospitable. And in this case, sure, I think in order to be better in service to Sokka, it would have been to say, hey, we should provide you with some of the ideas we have to get out of this tunnel, because that's clearly something that you value. Whereas Sokka could easily be held just as accountable to the nomads and saying, hey, you could be more hospitable towards these nomads by, picking up your instrument and joining in every now and then. Right? It seems like we empathize more with Sokka because, we want them to get out of the tunnel because that's what's going to move the storyline forward.
But me. I could have spent a whole year in the tunnel with those nomads.
Secret tunnel. Anyway, moral of the story is I think that hospitality lies in the lens of whomever is looking through it. And what does that service look like each time? Because it's different.
It changes based off of the situation.
100%.
A little bit off of hospitality, I have two lines that the nomads say at some point during the show that I think are just lovely lines. One is when Katara says, "Is that real, or is that a legend?" And he goes, "Oh, it's a real legend."
You sure it's Katara that says that?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
100%.
It's a real legend.
Katara doesn't say it's a real legend. She asked if it's real.
No.
I'd bet a tattoo on it.
You won't.
Yeah, I'll say if it's anyone but Katara, you have to get a tattoo.
No. I don't want a tattoo. You get a tattoo if you're wrong.
No, it's got to be all or nothing. Max gets the tattoo if I'm wrong.
I'm in.
Nope.
He just gets Appa right on his left thigh.
Is that the guy who wrote Dancing Queen?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
But the other line I like is the Bob Dylan reference when he goes, "The tunnels they are a changin'," which made me chuckle as well.
That is a Bob Dylan line. I heard that song. The tunnels there are changing.
Yeah, it was a clever reference, and I really have an appreciation for the nomads. They would have been my people.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Seems like you.
100%. What else? What were other moments of hospitality in that? So after showing hospitality, Zuko steals the bird horse.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting and worth talking about. For sure.
Let's dive in, shall we?
So, like, when people have been kind to me, when people have been generous and willing to serve me in a way that makes me better, my first gut instinct is not to take more from them. However, my question is, what kind of mental space do I need to be in where I feel justified doing that? And he talks about this in the beginning. He talks about how I'm struggling. I'm royalty. I shouldn't have to be doing this. And he feels like this is rightfully his in a way. And I think that's really interesting in terms of like what allows him to be hospitable versus what doesn't. And I think that has something to do with it.
Is there a base level of fear that he has of like being caught or not reaching his goal? And so does that fear put him in a place of these types of actions because it's driven by fear instead of compassion?
Probably. Likely.
I think what was one of the bigger issues was that Iroh went along with it, what I would say relatively easily. You get this initial, "What are you doing? They were just so kind to us." And then Zuko's like, "Yep," and they're about to be even kinder. And Iroh reluctantly gets on the bird horse and goes with them. Like, could he have not done more in that moment? Or, like, led differently?
I think that had it been me, I probably would have. But I'm also the type
we're not going to do this.
I think I'm also probably not the best teacher for Zuko. and I might be able to offer him something, but I don't think he would be. I don't know that he was ready for that, and I don't know that he would have responded well to Iroh in that moment had he pushed too hard.
Interesting. Like Zuko would have gone either way. Like he would have left Iroh.
I think that he would have been like, I'm not going to deal with this. I'm going to go because I'm tired of it.
And was he a little bit uncomfortable by like the vulnerability that
I think that's
the
exactly
girl
what it
was
was.
showing to him? And so he's like, I got to get out of here. I cannot stick around here because she's making me feel things.
And
she's making me feel my feelings, and I don't like that.
I think he had to dehumanize her in a way in order to allow himself to do that.
So if this is just a stranger
she's
that
a
I
peasant.
can steal from.
She's an Earth Kingdom peasant, and I can steal from her because I'm royalty. Because she is so like me that I have to distance myself from her.
If I have to put myself in a space that says like I'm so similar to her, but I'm not supposed to be.
Yeah.
The fear that comes along with that.
Ooh, I like that. I vibe with that a lot.
Interesting. Any other thoughts for this specific episode? They get out. The tomb scene was like. I don't feel that scene that much.
You know, the only thing that really spoke to me that I wrote down was love is brightest in the dark.
Like a lighthouse.
Yep, just like a lighthouse. It is brightest in the dark.
So, for those of you that want to have a generic, like, inspirational quote builder for your entire life.
Here's an idea. Let's give everybody a tool that they should spam.
Yeah, blank is a lighthouse. It helps show others the way when the way is dark. And then you can put anything into that phrase, and it works. Hospitality is a lighthouse that shows other people the way when the way is dark. Self-care is a lighthouse that shows other people the way when the way is dark.
Literally anything.
You want to try it, Max? You want to try anything?
No, but I would recommend Pruitt definitely keep whispering into the microphone. That's going to do really well in the podcast form.
He keeps us on track, and I love it. We're so much better when he's around.
I feel targeted.
He called you by name. He literally targeted you.
I don't like it.
Was that hospitable?
No.
Okay, well, Max isn't listening to the episode, except he's just the levels.
I have no idea. I don't know what words you're saying. I just am looking at the levels. You need to stop looking at your iPad when you're talking. You need to look at Alex. Do we know your name is Alex?
Yeah, Alex or Sunshine, either one's fine.
Why are we still talking about this?
Because
love is brightest in the dark.
Like a lighthouse.
Which is where we started.
It's like a lighthouse.
And I thought that was really interesting because I lost it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Bath bombs are a lighthouse that show other people the way when the way is dark. We were talking about the tomb, and that was the one thing you wrote down. That's how we got there. You want to retry it again?
Love is brightest in the dark. And I think that's a really cool statement. Yeah,
so that's about it from that tomb scene. Like, the story's cool about Omashu and how it got its name, but other than that, that's it. That didn't serve much of a purpose.
You know what's pretty wild is that, like, sometimes we talk about how stars are their brightest when they're in the dark, but, like, the sun is a star, and it's the brightest in the middle of the daytime, you know?
Well, technically, it's shining in the dark. Like, it's just we're so much in the brightness that it takes away the dark.
I've heard it both ways.
Interesting, though. The sun is a star.
Another quote I really enjoyed from the mom who was hospitable towards Iroh and Zuko was, "It brings me joy to have people eat my food with such gusto."
Oh, she would love me. Let me tell you. I don't know who the mom is in this situation.
We got Max to talk unprompted. I love it.
I talk all the
What is eating with gusto?
It's like it's a vigor, you know? It's a vigor with which you eat.
Okay.
Enthusiasm. Chutzpah.
All right.
Max, that didn't do well on the mic. I need you to do better.
It did great.
How would you know, Ben? You're not looking at the levels. Anything else we want to talk about this specific episode before we move on to... we've got another call-in from a fan. We have 2 fans.
2 fans.
We're up to 2 fans.
All I can say is don't let plans get in the way of the journey.
Yeah. Another great quote. Plans... The journey's like a lighthouse, all right?
Don't stop believing.
We can just go in circles and just little quotes. Mine will always involve a lighthouse. Plans can be a lighthouse. All right, we will be right back with our next voicemail, and we will talk about hospitality through what's after Earth. What's after Earth? Fire?
Wind.
In the rotation?
Water.
No.
Earth.
Earth, wind, fire.
Fire.
Fire. Great, thanks.
Air.
See, you know these things. Max doesn't know these things.
I know of the 70s funkadelic band Earth, Wind, and Fire, and after Earth is wind.
See, that's not how this works.
Well.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
You have reached the voicemail box of
Bending Not Breaking.
Please leave a message after the tone.
Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is definitely one of my favorite series. I was listening to your podcast and also just kind of watching through it, and what actually stuck out to me from even just the first couple minutes of the first episode was the way that Sokka and Katara go fishing. And actually, in Shakespeare, there are feminine ways to do things and very masculine ways to do things. And for example, if you look at Romeo and Juliet, a very masculine way to die is a dagger, right? Penetration of something. And a very feminine way to die is something that isn't penetration. So like, for example, medication, drinking. And so when I watched just even the first couple minutes, that's what kind of made me think of. Sokka is, using his spear and penetrating fish, while Katara is using her bending skills and water, which can, I guess, maybe be seen as feminine. And then another aspect that this always makes me think of is actually religion and faith, right? And faith of a lot of people see Aang, or they hear of Aang and they're like, don't worry, like this has happened before, and kind of like rub it off. And even Sokka has no interest at first, but I think the power of faith and like what that means to people, because I think sometimes faith can lead us to a path that feels really hopeless, and sometimes faith can lead us to a path where there is this fruition of things. And so I think in this case, Katara and Sokka have this great privilege and great challenge of dealing with faith, especially in The Last Airbender, and either trusting in that or distrusting in that. And I think that has a lot to do with like the way I see faith, right? Is sometimes it's very difficult. But sometimes it does come to fruition. So, yeah, Shakespeare and faith. That's really what I have to say on that. Thank you.
Hannah, that was Hannah who sent that in. Thank you. We have two whole fans. But that's a really interesting thing. Let's take it all the way back to the very first episode. We've talked about gender norms on the show before, but to really show like that in an even deeper way, kind of shows like, is there, from a writing standpoint, knowing that it's a majority male team, does that really affect the way that these characters are written and what they're doing, even subconsciously? Or is that just more like, that's Sokka would have the spear because he's supposed to be the manly man, the masculine one, so what's that done with purpose? And how does that play? But that's a trope that has existed for years.
Centuries even.
Yeah, a few.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because classic literature it's not just limited to classic literature and the tropes that are there. It's appearing in all sorts of media that we consume, whether it be television, podcasts, whether it be books, novels, fiction, nonfiction, whatever it be. Those tropes, those norms, those stereotypes are there. And those symbols are there, whether we realize it or not. And I think one of the ways that we can potentially change those culture, if we want to change them, is to become more aware of it. And so, because often we're blind to it unless we are practicing that awareness. And I think what I really like about your message, Hannah, is that it kind of brought awareness to us in a way that I didn't even think about when I was watching that episode. But it's really nice to pay attention to it now.
And as the show being almost a religious allegory throughout, it really is, right? Like, they firmly believe in the lore, they firmly believe in the history, they firmly believe in the magic that they have, and there's moments that we see disbelief in it, and there's moments that we see maybe too much faith put into it. But then also, how's this show been almost a religious experience for us? Like, we are currently creating a podcast talking about life lessons that can be learned from the show, almost as if it is a religious text. And so it really is a powerful religion or faith or spirituality can come from many different facets of life that aren't necessarily expected.
I mean, spirituality can come from fishing.
Absolutely.
Like, what brings you closer to yourself? What brings you closer to the connectedness that involves all of us, right? And whatever that is, whatever that thing is that connects all of us for you, whether it be God or whether it be love or whether it be something else, I think that whatever brings you closer to that is practicing your faith and having faith. And that might seem willy-nilly for some people or some other adjective, but frou-frou, sure.
Fluffy.
But faith is hard. It is hard. I agree with you, Hannah. It's not easy to have faith, especially in the moments where we're trialed, where we're in a trial and when we're tried. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting to see how this show depicts it, and I will definitely pay attention more as I continue through.
You could almost see, at least for me, the struggle Aang deals with at the beginning when running away from what you would call the responsibilities or the fears that he has that come up through the episodes really can be about someone's religious struggles that they experience as they go through life. If you were someone who started going to Sunday school or anything else, and then how did that challenge your viewpoints as you got older and learned more and where people can be today? I think that this was a really cool message, Hannah, so I appreciate you sending it in and letting us look at Avatar through those lenses of faith and gender norms and gender depiction, and that was something super helpful. If you've got something you want to share with us, the archive@gmail.com is a place where you can send any voice memos. You can tweet at us at BNB_pod or check us out on Instagram, BNB_pod there as well. But thank you for sharing, and we're excited to have more of y'all give us your input and be a part of this show. So thank you. As we are talking about kind of our devotion, we are looking at hospitality through a fire, the element of fire. Fire! Do you have a favorite song, Max, that has the word fire in it?
No.
He's done. He's ready to go. Ben, what are you planning on doing this week when it comes
to
I think before
Fire by Jimi Hendrix.
Before that, though.
Great pep band song.
Before that, though, I think we need to talk about, since we talked about it last week, what is fire?
What is fire?
Like, how does that translate? What does it mean to you? What does fire mean when it comes to this kind of looking through a fire lens?
Oh, man, fire is one of those interesting things that can be a helpful tool. It can also be super destructive. I see it as it spreads easily. It can be very powerful in the way that it can provide warmth and shelter. And for me, when I think of fire, I always think of it with just like someone who's extremely confident, someone who's able to be out there and play that role in a meaningful way. I'm rambling at this point, but yeah, that's fire. When I think of like confidence when I think of like the element of fire and the way that we engage with it.
So tell me how you're going to look at hospitality with a lens of fire.
I think one of the things that we talked about creating safe spaces and being hospitable, to do that with confidence and to do that with strong intention and fervor and vigor and gusto is really important. And I think so for me, being very intentional about doing that actively and not trying to hide that light, but to be able to kind of to spread it and do that publicly so that hopefully that it can warm others and inspire other people to do the same. And so I think that's going to be part of my goal this week is how do I create safe spaces with a strong intentionality and confidence that helps other people do the same.
That's kind of similar to mine. One of the things that I really want to focus on this week is I want someone to walk away from an interaction with me and think to themselves, wow, Ben is hospitable. And so I want to make people feel that warmth that I can provide. I want to be of service. And I don't want them to think that for like my benefit. I want to do it so well that they think that, and that's the message that they receive from interacting with me. I don't necessarily need to hear it, but I do want it to spread like wildfire. I want it to be so present and so visible and so warming that it spreads and that it catches and that it becomes something that people around me also do. And that's something that I want to focus on when it comes to fire and hospitality.
Nice. What are y'all going to do? What are you thinking about doing this week? Tweet at us. Let us know. And we can share some of that. But do something this week to better yourself, as always. Max, what do you got planned? Anything that you want to do this week?
No.
That was Max. Well, thank you again for being with us and listening to another episode of Bending Not Breaking. We are coming back next week, and our lens is going to be what, Ben?
Next week
We
are
Did I put you
watching
on the spot?
a really cool episode of Avatar.
Milk that time.
Episode 3.
Yes.
And we're going to be watching
Season 2.
Of Season 2 through a lens of patience.
Patience. Had to be patient with you as you were pulling up your phone to find out.
I forgot I had to produce that word.
Well, thank you all so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Hannah, and thank you last week again for Sam.
And thank you, Max, for being so
always
patient.
Thank you. Yeah, Max is very patient with us. Hopefully,
but more importantly, thank you, Hannah and Sam.
Yeah, they do. That was great. Keep sending in those things, and we will keep putting them on these episodes. Once again, I am Sunshine Mayfield.
And I am Ben Pruitt.
And this has been Bending Not Breaking. Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.